So this is a presentation we put together when things kind of go back to normal. This is a great presentation to have the advisors come in, and we'll actually go through this information and do the demos. If this is something you want to save, you can use it to help with the training for your employees for basic personal protective equipment. So we'll kind of go through this and we'll touch on a few different pieces of equipment and on the use, care, and limitations. So it's titled Personal Protective Equipment, the Last Line of Defense. So as we go through, so in your manual, you should have some instruction on how to use and fit PPE. This is an example of a respirator procedure. This can be found on the manufacturer's website or in the user guide when you buy the product. This is why it's so important to keep and this is why it's so important to review and keep manufacturer's instructions. So this will come with all pieces of personal protective equipment. All right, so when we go through section 87 of the regulations, this talks about summary of offense tickets, so SOTs. These are issued by OH&S to employers and in some cases workers for not following legislation. So in section 87(1)(a), the employer contractor shall supply approved personal protective equipment to the workers at no cost to the workers. So just some information for yourself, this ticket is $1,000. 87(1)(b) states that employers are to ensure that PPE is used by the workers. This ticket is also $1,000. And 87(4), workers who are provided with PPE are required to use it and take reasonable steps to prevent damage to it. We're going to talk about today about preventing damage to your personal protective equipment. This is a ticket that can be issued to workers for $250. So keep in mind that 87(5) also states that workers must return defective personal protective equipment. So not wearing PPE that an employer provided because it was damaged is never an excuse. So first one we're going to talk about here is protective headwear. So when we talk about classes of headwear, a Class C hard hat provides no dielectric protection. So there are two standards that a hard hat are made to. This is CSA, Canadian Standards Association, and ANSI, American National Standards Institute. They both use the same system. The classes divides a hard hat into groups by their dielectric properties, which is their ability to conduct electricity. When we move into a Class E hard hat, the Class E hard hat provides dielectric protection up to 20,000 volts. This is the highest dielectric protection available for a hard hat. All classes of hard hats provide the same protection from objects falling on your head. Then we go into a Class G hard hat. Class G hard hat provides dielectric protection up to 2,200 volts. At a high voltage, it will conduct electricity. A Class E hard hat may become a Class G hard hat if a lamp, bracket, or post for hearing protection are added to the hat, as you have changed the dielectric protection. So as you drill more holes into the hat from the manufacturer to add things in, you're just reducing its amount of dielectric protection. So your hard hat will also have a type. A type 1 hard hat provides protection if the object falls directly on top of your head. So this is the one that you're seeing right now. This is the most standard hard hat you're going to find on site. Then we move into a type 2 hard hat. A type 2 hard hat provides protection if the object falls directly on top and if the object hits the side of your head. You can have a Class E, type 1, or type 2 hard hat. So be specific in your policy as to which one the workers will need. This one, you're going to see more in, say, things like the logging industry, or sometimes it's in the policy for some people that work around cranes or things that have low swinging objects. So the label on your hard hat needs a label or an imprint on this information on it. If the label is missing, you'd have to get a new hat. We often get asked, what happens if the sticker falls off? Well, I just said it, you'll need to make sure that you get a new hard hat, as the CSA approval is not indicated. Unless, of course, this information is imprinted on the hard hat itself. So this symbol you've sometimes seen imprinted on the sticker. This is the reverse donning symbol, which means the hard hat meets the standard if it's worn forwards or backwards, as long as the suspension system is rotated. So you don't want your ratchet on the front of your face. Unless your company states otherwise, the hard hat can be backwards to facilitate a face shield or a welding helmet. It's best practice to leave it forward though, as the brim of the hard hat helps to deflect material from your face. So this little symbol on here is the date that the hard hat was molded. So we often get asked, when does a hard hat expire? So this is not only up to company policy, but more importantly, manufacturer's recommendations. So don't go by this date as the because this is the manufacturer's date. So the replacement date should be from the date it's put in use. So you will have to keep track of when you put your hard hat in use. So the middle number there that you'll see is the year, and then it's pointing to the month. All right, so we often see this on site. People often like to store items in between their hard hat and the suspension system. Although it's convenient, it's a terrible idea and not the manufacturer's intended use of this space. The clearance between your suspension system and hard hat must be maintained to provide the proper use of your hard hat while you're wearing it. So if you're wearing like a hat or something like that, this is not what you want because it could end up in your skull if something was to fall on your head. We definitely don't want that. So we get asked if it's okay to wear, a hat or a toque under your hard hat. The short answer is no. Especially again, like with a baseball cap with the metal button on top, if an object were to fall on top of your head, that metal button would be driven into your head. Wearing things like hoods, those stop your peripheral vision, and certain things like that button, that metal button, could diminish the dielectric properties of your hard hat. So instead, you can use manufacturer-approved liners. These are things that you might want to include in your company's personal protective equipment policy. So inspecting your hard hat is not just a visual process. One thing you'll want to do is compress the shell inward from the sides about 1 inch, so around 2.5 centimeters with both hands, and then release the pressure without dropping the shell. Shell should quickly return to its original shape, exhibiting elasticity. Sunlight can cause significant damage to your hard hat as well. But if the sample does not exhibit elasticity similar to that of a new shell, replace it. You want to make sure that you're inspecting the shell for damage, cracks, abrasion, or excessive wear. Obviously, these are very extreme, but in any case, you want to make sure that you're inspecting for those. You want to make sure you inspect the suspension straps for cuts, frays, chemical damage. Make sure that the ratchet system opens and closes fully, and that suspension slots tie into the hard hat fully and flush. So a big question we get often is, can you put stickers on your hard hat? Yes, pressure sensitive non-metallic stickers or tape are okay to put on hard hats. The stickers should not be within ½ inch of the edge of the hard hat. If they are closer, this could affect dielectric properties of the hard hat. Some people ask why not the metallic stickers, and the metallic stickers again can change the dielectric properties. With the stickers on the outside, you're still able to check the inside for any damages, any hairline cracks or anything, but it's just very important that you're able to inspect that hard hat. If you do cover both sides of the hard hat, then the inspection, you're not able to conduct that inspection. So when it comes to hard hat maintenance and care, clean the hard hat shell and suspension system with a mild detergent and hot water. This is really good information to have during an orientation, is to just make sure your hard hat is clear. This stops the growth of things like bacteria, keeps the hard hat clean, and makes it easier to do the inspection. All right, so we are going to move on to eye protection. So the Canadian National Institute for the Blind states 700 Canadian workers per day sustain eye injuries on the job. In Canada, eyewear will have a Z94.3, the CSA logo, and in the States, they'll have the ANSI Z87. In Canada, in order to meet the standard, the glasses must pass the CSA impact test. To pass the test, it must withstand an impact of a 6.4 millimeter steel ball traveling at a speed of 46.5 meters a second or 102.9 miles per hour. CSA Z94 divides eye protection into 6 classes. Some classes have different levels. So this table from the standard outlines the hazards that are best controlled by each class. Looking at the hazard exposure to dust and wind, the table recommends glasses, goggles, non-rigid hoods, and face shields. So the company's safe job procedures and practices may narrow it down from this list. The CE logo, it's a mark certifying that indicates a product's conformity with the health, safety, environmental protection standards for products sold within the European Economic Area. We often hear the question if a pair of sunglasses with this logo, like, they may have this logo on their sunglasses, are they CSA approved? And the answer is that on sunglasses, this just means that they meet UV requirements and not that they're safety glasses, right? So when determining for your safety glasses, again, you want to see that CSA or ANSI, Z87 or Z94 point. So both clear and colored lenses can be CSA or ANSI approved. In fact, safety glasses have a wide variety of styles and colors to choose from. However, you may decide to include in your policy that tinted glasses are for outdoor use only. You may want your policy to state that you require the foam insert type of protective eyewear. Many companies are switching to these due to their ability to provide protection against wind-driven dust and debris. If you wear prescription glasses, you may have CSA or ANSI approved eyewear. Otherwise, you must wear the over the glasses type of safety glasses. Your policy may state that side shields on prescription eyewear is required. Face shields are another means of eye protection. You may want to include in your policy that eyewear be worn with face shields. This could also be outlined in your safe job procedures. Section 145, grinding machines, states eye or face protector, and section 93.1 states eye or face protectors as well. So this is a big one, care and maintenance of safety glasses. We get asked the question how often companies should be cleaning safety glasses. The best way to do it is with lens cleaning solution. I know a lot of people don't carry that on. The problem with using things like Dawn is that could remove an anti-fog coating. So when cleaning your eye protection, remember to use a lens cleaner or just warm water. Clean the sides and earpieces. Avoid abrasive cleaners or rough cloths. Inspect daily for cracks, broken arms, damaged nose pieces, and store in a hard case if you can or a microfiber pouch to prevent damage. The problem with using your shirt to just clean your glasses is now you've just basically turned your shirt into a piece of sandpaper and you're going to scratch the glasses and ruin the coatings. All right, so we will move on to hand protection. All right. So according to Saskatchewan Workers' Compensation Board, claims made in 2017, hand injuries accounted for nearly 30% of all injuries in the construction industry. So you're going to notice a few things on this glove. The first being the ratings. Let's see if I can get this to work. So perfect. Outlined in the red, the 4 numbers are abrasion, cut, tear, and puncture. So those are those 4 numbers just located underneath the shield there. A good way to remember this is just the acronym ACT-P, abrasion, cut, tear, puncture. So outlined in yellow, we have the grams rating. Sorry, let me just get rid of something here. There we go. Oh, there we go. Okay, good. We'll have more on this in a second. The gloves pictured have the old rating and the new rating to the right of them. The rating is a level 2, which is 500 to 999 grams. The gloves pictured are rated for light cut hazards. This has become kind of an area of a lot of confusion because there is a lot going on gloves nowadays with the introduction of the new system. So we are going to talk more on that here in a second. So the A1 to A9 system for cut resistance in grams is a much more accurate way to decide on what level of protection you'll need against the hazards you'll face on the job. So you can see here that that A1 is 200 grams or less. This is just for material handling, small parts assembly, sharp edges, packing, warehouse, general purpose, forestry, construction. So anywhere where you're going to see some very light cut hazards. Whereas you roll up to the A9, this is a really heavy duty glove for metal stamping, metal recycling, pulp, and paper. So just changing blades and things like that. You might even run into these with food prep and processing, meat processing. Generally speaking, on a construction site, you're going to see anything from an A3, maybe an A6, but this all really depends on the hazards. You can't just take that as a general statement. This is just what we see most often on site. So this is where I said things kind of get a little confusing, because this is where we start mixing the old ratings, which I showed you before, which was that Act P, those 4 numbers under the shield. With the EN 388 ratings, these are from the European standards. So this rating system allows for more accurate testing of higher rated gloves. So when we start getting into those A1 through 9, this allows us to get a much more accurate reading to separate those categories. So again, we'll kind of go through this from the beginning because it does mix the old then with the new. So under number 1, that abrasion resistance. So the material is subjected to abrasion by a sandpaper under a determined pressure. Protection level is indicated on a scale of 1 to 4, depending on the number of turns required until a hole appears in the material. The higher the number is, the better the resistance to abrasion. So the cut resistance, so this is known as a COOP test. This was the original test that has been determining the strength of gloves for a long time. So the cut protection is tested. The knife is passed over the glove material until it cuts through. The protection level is given by a number of 1 through 5, where 5 indicates the highest cut protection. This test is known as the COOP test. So this has been used for a long time, like I had said earlier. Now we go into the tearing strength. So a force is required to tear the glove material apart is measured. The protection is indicated by a number 1 to 4, where 4 indicates the strongest material. Then we move on to the puncture test. So based on the amount of force required to puncture the material with a tip, so it's basically like a nail. The protection function is indicated again by a number between 1 and 4, where a 4 indicates the strongest material. Now we get into the next test. So this is the cut resistance TDM test, also known as the ISO test. So the result of this test is given by a letter A to F, where F indicates the highest level of protection. If any of these letters is given, this method determines a protection level instead of the COOP test. So this will be the major determining factor in determining the level of cut resistance. And when this is done with a new blade every time, whereas the COOP test originally used the same blade for all the testing. The new test uses a brand new blade every time it's tested. So it's a lot more accurate when it comes to those higher level of gloves. And then we have the impact protection, which is the last one there. So if the glove has an impact protection, the information is given by the letter P. If the test is not performed on any one of these, it will be replaced with an X. So sometimes companies choose to do the TDM test or the ISO test instead of the COOP test. So where the COOP test, instead of displaying a 2 or a 5 or anything like that, it'll just have an X, and then they'll have a rating on the cut resistance TDM test. I hope that kind of explained things. And using that A1 to A9, that's going to determine as well as the level of cut resistance that they have. So, all right. So when it comes to choosing a glove, it's important to remember that no single glove will provide protection in all applications or against every hazardous substance. During the glove selection process, identify key elements that are required to perform the job safely. Are there chemical hazards present? Are abrasions and punctures from sharp objects a problem? Is a secure grip vital to the application? Is dexterity important? Pictured here are 6 different styles of gloves that offer 6 different levels of hazards from different tasks. So we have electrical insulating, general purpose leather, cut resistance, heat resistance, cold resistance, chemical resistance. So it's really important that you determine what the hazard is before you determine the glove you need, and then you can figure out what level of protection you need after that. So it's kind of one glove does not fit every application. When it comes to care and use, work gloves should fit comfortably and never be too tight or too loose. The material must be appropriate for the type of work performed and should stand up to the tasks involved. Workers should have all the relevant information pertaining to their gloves, including whether or not they're reusable. Never wash or reuse disposable gloves. That's more important now than ever. Keep gloves clean and dry. Store gloves in appropriate conditions for their use. For example, rubber insulated gloves should be stored in a cool, dark area that's far away from any heat or steam. Nothing should be placed on top of gloves as it might distort their shape. Make sure backup pairs are available in case gloves get damaged or need to be washed or dried. Check for holes, tears, cracks, discoloration, stiffness, or other signs of damage before each use. Visual inspection might be enough in some cases, but depending on the type of glove, a more thorough inspection can be performed. So for some gloves, like maybe Petroflex gloves or something, they like to fill them with water to ensure that there's no pinhole leaks. Make sure they're replaced if they're damaged, and wash gloves in a mild detergent, warm water, let them dry. A lot of times people will, it's always a good idea, turn them inside out for a little while and then turn them the right side in and continue to let them dry. All right, so moving on to hearing protection. So there are many types of hearing protection and they all have different ratings. So keep in mind in section 99.2 of the Occupational Health and Safety Regulations, it states that we have to wear hearing protection when noise level is greater than 85 decibels. Hearing protection reduces the decibels to a safe level, but it does not reduce the decibels to a level of 0. So keep in mind that 85 decibels is a magic number where you need hearing protection. So this gets a lot of attention, and we have a lot of questions on this sometimes. So hearing protection uses a scale to rate them. It's called the NRR, Noise Reduction Rating. The NRR is the number of decibels that the sound will be reduced by using this device. So here are some samples of noise reduction ratings for plugs and ear muffs. Each manufacturer is different. So we get asked what happens if you wear them together, right? So logically, we would assume that if we use both, we would get 32 plus 25, so we would have 57 decibels of protection since we're using both of them together. So what actually happens, according to OSHA, is that adding 5 decibel rating to the product with the highest NRR gives you the new noise reduction rating. So using the 2 items above, the combined NRR would be 32 plus 5 equals 37 decibels of noise reduction rating. So I hope that kind of clears things up for a lot of people. So here's a table to show various noises and how long it takes for hearing damage to occur. So as you can see, we often underestimate the decibel level of some noises we come into contact on a daily or weekly basis, right? So even things like mowing your lawn, if you're mowing your lawn once a week, that has an NRR, or sorry, a decibel rating of 91 decibels, right? So if we wanted to operate a chainsaw, it has a noise level of 115 decibels when running. So if you use some roll-up earplugs with an NRR of 25 decibels, the new decibel level for you is 90 decibels. So at 115 decibels, the operating time is 30 seconds. By using the earplugs, the decibel level has been lowered to 90, which means we can now operate for 2 hours. And again, if we use some secondary protection, we can add 5, which will, bring us down a little bit more. So that may give us a little bit more time. So again, when it comes to the ratings, if we look at those yellow lines, we can see the effectiveness of hearing protection in the lab. As you can see, the hearing protection devices provide some pretty good protection. We also have to remember this is a lab setting, which is controlled by experts. Plugs were inserted into the ear canal correctly, and everything was monitored during the testing. So if we look at the gray lines, we can see that this is what it's more reflective of the real world. The effectiveness of hearing protection is way lower than in the lab setting. This is because people don't wear hearing protection properly most times. This could be for a lot of reasons, whether it's laziness, maybe lack of education. People just don't know what it feels like to have an earplug set in properly. They're in a rush, complacency, whatever the case is. This graph shows the importance of proper education and proper fit, and how installation of the earplugs is super vital. So when it comes to inserting earplugs, somewhere in your policy or training, you should have some proper installation instructions. So make sure your workers are informed and are wearing hearing protection properly. Hearing protection is not effective if it's not used correctly. It's just like any other piece of personal protective equipment. Here's one that's really, really important as well, is to remember to discard single-use earplugs when you're done. Wash multiple-use earplugs or earmuffs in mild soap and warm water, and inspect for any damage like rips and tears. I know I worked on a job site years ago where people were reusing the disposable ones that are attached to the cord. They attach them to the back of their helmet, use them for weeks. We had an outbreak of ear infections. We traced it back to people reusing earplugs. So it's very important to make sure you have a lot of these on site. And if you're using multiple use ones, to make sure that they're washed as much as you can. You know, it's good to make sure you're washing them daily or frequently during the day, every time you take them out if possible. All right, so protective footwear. So the CSA standard on footwear has many different classifications. The green triangle indicates that the boot has a grade 1 protective toe and puncture resistant sole. The triangle has nothing to do with the height of the boot. As an important note, the triangle actually only appears on the right boot. And if you don't believe me, go take a look. Not right now, after the webinar, you can go check. Believe it or not, the CSA approved sandals with the green triangle exist. So when you're creating your PPE policy, make sure to be specific when it comes to footwear. Specify height, laces or no laces, green triangle, etc. So for example, all employees are required to wear lace-up, 8-inch tall, green triangle CSA approved boots. Be specific on the type of boot too. If you want boots with ankle support, write it out. CSA approved cowboy boots also exist. One thing that comes up often in our classrooms and on site is if employers are required to provide boots, like they have to provide eye protection, for example. The short answer is that the only time an employer is to supply protective footwear is when the worker's feet may be endangered by hot, corrosive, or toxic substances. So there are other CSA designations for toe and sole protection. The yellow triangle indicates grade 2 and sole protection. The blue triangle indicates grade 1 toe and no sole protection. There are multiple CSA standards, so you must be specific when creating your policy. The CSA also has secondary symbols. So the orange Greek letter omega indicates electric shock protection. This protection is weakened as you walk through mud and water. The yellow SD tag indicates static dissipative footwear. Static protection for those that work in computer server rooms, for example. The black M indicates metatarsal protection, which is the top of the foot. And the green evergreen indicates chainsaw protection. So the classification be added together like in a boot, which is grade 1 sole protection, dielectric shock protection, and metatarsal protection. If this is something that you want, specify it in your policy. Make sure people know before they're hired on during the orientation that you require a specific boot because you've identified such hazards required on your job sites or for your company. Oh, sorry about that. I didn't switch over here. So that's what it would look like. All right, so it's important to inspect your protective footwear before you put it on. Check for an exposed toe cap, cracked leather, excessive wear, damaged soles, broken laces, or anything else that may affect the protection of the wearer's feet. So you want to make sure that you do a thorough inspection. We see a lot of times people with exposed toe caps. You can get toe cap covers that can fix that up, provided they're installed correctly. But you really want to make sure that you're doing a once over on your boots, especially daily. I know people do it a lot of times when they work in the roofing industry so that they don't damage membranes. They have to check over the soles of their boots often, but they often neglect the rest of the boots. So it's really important that you're doing a thorough inspection of your boots and stick to your policy and manufacturer's recommendations. All right, so try and keep your footwear clean, which can be difficult given the time of season. Mud and moisture will reduce the electric shock resistance of the footwear. So to use a leather protective coating will extend the life of your boots. This will reduce the dielectric properties, but so will mud and moisture. And for those that work with concrete, I've done it a lot. Concrete will destroy your boots. So it's very important that you have separate rubber boots for dealing with concrete that meet all the CSA standards. And don't walk through concrete in your boots. It will destroy them. All right, so that is everything. I appreciate the time to go through this with everybody.